Good evening. The International Court of Justice at The Hague in the Netherlands has ordered that Israel take immediate and effective measures to enable the provision of urgently needed basic services and humanitarian assistance in the Gaza Strip. The ICJ says Palestinians have a right to be protected from acts of genocide. South Africa dragged Israel to the World Court, accusing it of committing genocide in Gaza. Israel says it will continue to defend itself against Hamas that attacked Israel in October last year. Kylie Kumalo has more.
Israel shall take all measures within its power to prevent and punish the direct and public incitement to commit genocide in relation to members of the Palestinian group in the Gaza Strip.
After days of anticipation, the International Court of Justice has made its preliminary findings on South Africa versus Israel matter. It's also recognized that the situation is dire in Gaza as the conflict continues.
The court further considers that Israel must take immediate and effective measures to enable the provision of urgently needed basic services and humanitarian assistance to address the adverse conditions of life faced by Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. Israel must also take effective measures to prevent the destruction and ensure the preservation of evidence related to allegations of acts within the scope of Article 2 and Article 3 of the Genocide Convention against members of the Palestinian group in the Gaza Strip. Regarding the provisional measure requested by South Africa that Israel must submit a report to the court on all measures taken to give effect to the order, the court recalls that it has the power, reflected in Article 78 of the Rules of Court, to request the parties to provide information on any matter connected with the implementation of any provisional measures it has indicated. In view of the specific provisional measures it has decided to indicate, the court considers that Israel must submit a report to the court on all measures taken to give effect to this order within 1 month as from the date of this order.
The World Courts do not rule on the core of the case brought by South Africa, whether genocide has occurred in Gaza. But it has recognized the rights of Palestinians to be protected from acts of genocide.
At present, many Palestinians in the Gaza Strip have no access to the most basic foodstuffs, potable water, electricity, essential medicines, or heating. The World Health Organization has estimated that 15% of the women giving birth in the Gaza Strip are likely to experience complications, and indicates that maternal and newborn death rates are expected to increase due to the lack of access to medical care. In these circumstances, the court considers that the catastrophic humanitarian situation in the Gaza Strip is at serious risk of deteriorating further before the court renders its final judgment.
The ICJ has also expressed its concerns about the plight of the hostages from Israel who are still held in Gaza.
It is gravely concerned about the fate of the hostages abducted during the attack in Israel on 7 October 2023 and held since then by Hamas and other armed groups, and calls for their immediate and unconditional release.
Meanwhile, the World Court has further raised the issue of dehumanizing language used against Palestinians. It has taken notes of statements made by some high-profile leaders like Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and some cabinet ministers in Israel who have ordered a complete siege in Gaza. Kylie Kumalo, SABC News, Johannesburg.
The United Nations Secretary General has taken note of the order handed down by the International Court of Justice against Israel, indicating provisional measures in the case brought by South Africa. The court earlier ordered Israel to prevent acts of genocide against Palestinians as prescribed by the Genocide Convention of 1948, but stopped short of demanding an immediate ceasefire. This was the Secretary General's spokesperson a short time ago.
The Secretary General notes that the court's decision to order Israel, among other things, in accordance with its obligations under the Genocide Convention, to, and I quote, to take all measures within its power, and quote, in relation to the Palestinians in Gaza, to prevent the commission of acts within the scope of Article 2 of the Convention, including killing, causing serious bodily or mental harm, deliberately inflicting conditions of life calculated to bring about the group's destruction, and imposing measures intended to prevent births. He also notes that the court's instructions to Israel to ensure with immediate effect that its military do not commit any of these acts. Further, the Secretary General takes special note of the court's order to Israel to ensure the provision of urgently needed basic services and humanitarian assistance to address the adverse conditions of life faced by Palestinians in Gaza. He also notes that the emphasis of the court that, and I quote, all parties to the conflict in the Gaza Strip are bound by international humanitarian law, end quote, and that it calls for the immediate and unconditional release of the hostages abducted during the attacks in Israel on October 7th and held since then by Hamas and other groups, end quote. The Secretary General recalls that pursuant to the Charter and to the statute of the court, decisions of the court are binding, and trusts that all parties will duly comply with the order from the court. In accordance with the statute of the International Court of Justice, the Secretary General will promptly transmit the notice of the provisional measures ordered by the court to the Security Council.
For more on this, we're now joined by SABC News UN correspondent Sherwin Bryce-Pease, who has been following the story quite closely throughout the day. Sherwin, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Of course, you have been following this case throughout the day, and that judgment in which we saw handed down there by the ICJ against Israel. Perhaps maybe you can just give us some more reaction coming through on your end.
Mbali, there was some follow-up questions to that statement by Stefan Dujarric, the Secretary General spokesperson, where, they wanted to sort of get a deeper understanding of the Secretary General's reaction to this court order. And Stefan said that the Secretary General's demand remains the same. He still wants to see an immediate humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza, which, of course, was omitted from the provisional measures handed down by the court. And he said that was the Secretary General's request yesterday. It's the Secretary General's request today, and it will be his request tomorrow. But a very legalese statement from the UN spokesperson there, essentially echoing exactly what the court judgment said. In addition to that, we have heard from the State Department and the White House, right? What is the US's reaction to the ICJ order? Let me read you a little bit about what the State Department is saying. The ICJ ruling is consistent with our view that Israel has the right to take action to ensure the terrorist attack on October 7th cannot be repeated in accordance with international law. We continue to believe the allegations of genocide are unfounded and the court did not make a finding about genocide or call for a ceasefire in that regard. Add to that the White House statement. John Kirby, the White House national security spokesperson, is actually at the podium at the White House right now. A few moments ago, he says that the court didn't find Israel guilty of genocide. The court's rulings, he continued, were consistent with many of the US's positions and approach that has been taken, including that Israel has the right to defend itself from the October 7th attacks. And it echoes, he believes, U.S. calls for more humanitarian aid to enter Gaza. We've also seen some reaction from Germany. Germany said the ICJ did not rule on the merits of the case in Bali, but ordered provisional measures and interim relief proceedings. However, these are also binding under international law. Israel must abide by them. We also heard from Belgium. Belgium called on Israel to fully implement provisional measures. Spain said it celebrates the provisional measures ordered and calls on all parties to comply with the measures in its entirety. We've also seen some sentiments from Algeria. Algeria is a current non-permanent member of the UN Security Council. They have called for a Security Council meeting and likely a resolution that will, quote, activate the order that was handed down by the International Court of Justice. You've also heard from the Israeli Prime Minister saying that they will continue to do what is necessary to defend Israel and its people. The state of Palestine, the Foreign Minister Riyad al-Maliki, saying that they welcomed the provisional measures ordered by the ICJ, ruling in favor of humanity and international law. And he affirmed Palestine's eternal gratitude to the people and government of South Africa. Now, a short time ago, at an event to mark the official commemoration of International Holocaust Remembrance Day, which is tomorrow, the 27th of January. It's an annual event in the General Assembly here at the United Nations, and incidentally coinciding with today's ruling out of The Hague by the International Court of Justice. The Israeli ambassador Gilad Erdan spoke at the podium in the General Assembly, reacting to the ICJ ruling, and this is what he had to say. Watch.
Of all days, the day that we commemorate the genocide of the Jewish people and swear here never again, the International Court of Justice made it clear that it won't reject outright the case of a Nazi terror organization that seeks to commit genocide against the Jewish people. It's outrageous. Every year we dedicate this day to discuss the surging Jew hatred poisoning the world. And this year, the year in which the largest number of Jews were massacred since the Holocaust, anti-Semitism has risen to heights not seen since the Nuremberg laws. We can only draw one conclusion, a sad conclusion. The UN has failed in its mission, has failed.
Mbali, I think in summary from the global reaction we are seeing, those who were for South Africa are claiming great victory today after the ICJ judgment, right? South Africa didn't get all the provisional measures it had sought, but certainly got some and is proclaiming that as a huge victory. On the Israeli side, they are saying, of course, the case, the court has not pronounced itself on the broader veracity of South Africa's allegation of genocide, and that the court did not, very pointedly, did not call or order an immediate humanitarian ceasefire, and that, from the Israeli side, is being viewed as a victory. And then if you listen to countries like the United States, they're saying, well, the court's decision has echoed essentially what they've been saying all the time in terms of Israel's right to defend itself, but of course not yet ruling on South Africa's claim in terms of the Genocide Convention that Israel, as a signatory to that convention, is not living up to its commitments.
All right, that's our correspondent there, then Sherwin Bryce-Pease. Thank you so much for that wrap and that update coming in from your end with the reaction there continuing to come in thick and fast. Sherwin Bryce-Pease, SABC News UN correspondent, just giving us an update there when it comes to the various reaction, especially that also coming out from the United Nations, the Secretary General, António Guterres. They're also saying that they have noted the order from the ICJ. And of course, you would remember that António Guterres is the one from the UN who has been calling for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire. But of course, that did not come out of the ICJ today.